I feel so badly for most of these owners and growers because their focus is like, "Oh, I want to grow the best weed possible," and it's admirable, and they're
Yes.
probably doing a really good job. But the market doesn't care, right?
Mhm.
Percentage of the market just cares about, you know, getting the cheapest weed possible with the highest THC level, which goes back to that education problem. And so you have to realize that that's the truth of it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Books and Backbone podcast. My name is Donna Harris. I'm the owner of Bookkeeping Made Simple in Utah. And with me today is Doc Collins. Doc, tell us a little bit about what you do and why you love doing it.
I started the Hood Collective. It's a cannabis marketing agency in probably, I have to do some math, but I think 2017, so 8 years ago. And yeah, we started in Portland, Oregon, and now we're national and really international. We've had a few international clients in scope, and we focus specifically on cannabis, CBD, HCA, which may be going away soon. I'm sure we'll probably talk
I'm
about
going to
that.
ask you about that.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, we do content marketing, so that includes branding, logo design, web design, social media, SEO, um, blog writing, copywriting, etc.
Awesome. Awesome. How'd you get into that?
Me and my business partner were wanting to start a video production company, and we knew we wanted to focus on a specific niche to kind of make it easier to target clients and to kind of stand out.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't know what that was, and so in the beginning, like you do, we're just taking any jobs that came our way as we're trying to figure out where we want to focus. And we randomly got a couple cannabis jobs, and um, people they were saying, "Oh, yeah, it's the green rush," because it had just started a couple years earlier. The legal industry, recreationally in Oregon, and they said it's the green rush. People have duffel bags full of cash that they can't put into the bank because of the banking regulations, and they don't know what to do with all that money. So it's easy. And we're like, wow, that sounds too good to be true. And it very quickly proved too good to
And
be
it was.
true. Yeah. But yeah, that's how we got started.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the Farm Bill. The,
Oh, yeah.
this mess that they're pushing through this week.
Yeah. So anyone that's familiar with the cannabis industry, I'm sure, is familiar with the 2018 Farm Bill, which um, legalized hemp nationally and um, allowed for CBD companies to operate legally. And there is still an opt out, or individual states were able to say, no, we don't want this. And so a few states like Idaho, Utah, have banned hemp in various forms. So the state laws may not always be the same, but in most states, hemp, non psychoactive, cannabis is legal to grow, to sell, to ship in most states. And so that was a real boon for a lot of these states. It created a lot of opportunities for farmers and entrepreneurs. But there was a specific loophole that they're trying to close, and they're trying to close it not in a targeted way, but in a very blunt way that may wipe out the entire industry. And that loophole was that um, there's a substance called THCA. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but for people that aren't, THCA is a form of THC that is not psychoactive in its raw form. But once it is heated, it converts into THC and becomes psychoactive.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a technicality of the Farm Bill that it is able to, um, it kind of falls under hemp when, when you immediately start to think about it, what does it mean to heat? cannabis, well, if you're smoking it, if you're baking it, if you're doing any of the processing that you would do to hemp, you're going to be heating it. And so, so it's just this huge loophole that let people sell THC but classify it as THCA. So I understand why they would want to close this loophole, but it seems, and nothing is settled. The last time I looked, which was yesterday, I haven't looked today. But
Yeah, I
it,
think yesterday,
yeah,
Tuesday was when I started to see it
yeah,
across my feed.
yeah, and so they want, like, certain people want to outlaw all hemp, um, which is extremely short-sighted,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because one, the issue that people are really having is with, oh, I can sell cannabis and call it hemp, but we all know, wink wink, that it's actually going to get you high.
Right. Well, I mean, it's the same plant, and that's what
Yeah.
people don't understand. It's cannabis sativa either way. It is whether or not it's
Mhm.
feminized.
Right.
So,
Yeah, so I can understand why you'd want to get rid of that loophole, but to then rid of all the other forms of CBD that are not psychoactive,
right.
that it's so short-sighted because many of the states, like Kentucky, Tennessee, like, these are red states, and so these red politicians are wanting to get rid of it. They're harming their own constituents, and I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of blowback about it.
I
And
think we've gotten used to having it on the market.
yeah, and
So to
mhm,
suddenly take it away and for no real good I understand age restrictions, that's fine. I don't want my children, I don't want children getting into it, even though, folks, it won't hurt you. Um, we don't want kids messing with their brains. I get that. But to suddenly take something that I live in Utah, so I'm all the time going, the legislature is not my mother. You
right,
know, I can figure out for myself what I want to do with my own body. And somehow my body, my choice only applies to one thing.
right.
So,
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's
which is a whole nother controversial subject that we
yeah.
won't get into.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of inquiries from hemp and THCA companies, and with THCA specifically, I have been saying, are you sure? Are you operating in states where it's going to continue to be legal? Because a lot of states have closed that THCA loophole,
Mm-hmm.
again, in different ways, which I understand. Like, I think it's a separate question. THCA and CBD in general, those are two different issues. Um, and so and I've gotten different answers from business owners saying, we're actually worried about it. I'm in Texas, for example, and we're worried what's going to happen here, but we're still hopeful that we're going to be able to ship it out, or we're going to be, so everyone has been dealing with this possibility for a while in different ways because every state is different. But now they've basically just taken a wrecking ball to the whole law. And so, yeah, that's going to hit a lot of people really hard. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, I have problems with it all the way around because like I said, we've gotten used to having these products on the market. We have learned what they're good for and what they're not great for. We have figured out a lot of things. The cannabis and hemp industry does seem to be fairly self-regulating. There are always going to be bad actors, but for the most part, everybody I've talked to in the cannabis industry has asked for more regulations.
mhm,
Let's make sure that this is regulated appropriately and not overregulated
yeah,
or so loosely regulated that children are, your 5-year-old is buying some.
right. Well, I think that's the key issue, probably always, which is the right amount of regulation. No one can ever say what that is, and everyone's going to argue over it. Legal businesses in the industry want to get rid of the black market and the gray
Mm-hmm.
market that's undercutting their legal business. You're a legal business. You're paying your taxes. you're doing everything the right way. You're going through all the hoops and licensing, and you're making a huge investment. And then you're competing against people on the black market that don't have all of those obstacles, and it's not fair. Um,
Right.
and so, yeah, legal businesses want everyone to be on a level playing field, and they also would love for a level playing field nationwide, that everyone's playing by the same rules, because that'll make it so easy, much easier. Not, I don't think it'll ever be easy, but yeah. Um, but I don't know. It's a pipe dream to have that kind of.
Well, it always amazes me because it is a fairly harmless substance. You're more likely to die of drinking too much water than of using cannabis or hemp, either one. I should say maybe THC. And so I feel like there's a lot of alarmism around everything to do with anything psychoactive that's unnecessary. Um, I that's what it feels like to me. Feels like reefer madness.
For sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not gone away. That's for sure. Um, and I mean, I grew up in Indiana, so, and I
Mhm.
have family members that have different opinions about cannabis, and some, like, one of my sisters is open to has used CBD for different health issues, and is definitely open to it, and is definitely of a libertarian bent, and so doesn't really understand all the, again, like, why is the government making decisions for me. um, but I have another sister that is, like, just has this idea that it's, a gateway drug, and it's because that's what she grew up with. And if you don't know any better, if you don't understand, you know, and that's, I think, part of the industry's fault, and where the industry has really failed is doing a better job of educating. Because, and this is another issue, I don't know if it's on your list of things to talk about, but I think one of the major failings of the industry, um, and it's happening both business by business. Every business is making the same mistake. Not every, but most, and then it creates, the industry is failing at the same time because of it, which is a lack of education and a lack of investment in educating people. And because most companies are targeting, the hardcore users that they're used to from the legacy market. Who are the people they were selling to before it was legal? The people that were most into, getting high and buying, and that would run the whole gamut from, the hippies of the 60s to now, who just like to, you know, get high when they're, at a concert, or or more often, or whatever. But that's it, that's the only thing. And then there's other people that it's, one of many drugs that they use, and drug use becomes a real problem for them. And everyone has their own story around the use of cannabis and other substances. But dealers who were in the illicit market, because there is such a high risk, only the people that really, really wanted it, and were willing to take that risk, were going to be buying it. And so it was, they were targeting this small subset of the people who might have been interested in it. And now it's legal, and everyone has legalized, and they're still in this mindset of, like, oh, we're targeting these users. We have to have the highest THC. We want to have a brand that reflects our roots in the illicit market with the psychedelic, hip hop,
Mhm.
kind of aesthetics that have always been associated with cannabis. And there's this huge, untapped market, and so many, from older people who are dealing with medical issues that are, starting to be served by the CBD market, to, young professionals, moms. There's all kinds of different groups that you could be targeting with your brand. especially if you're educating people on, the truth and like the different way, like it's not just about getting as high as possible, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Ironically, the high THC content may not result in a good high.
exactly.
Sometimes it just kind of fizzles out. And so more of a balance would be great. We don't have to have 195% THC in anything.
Well, and the most like the two things that are like kind of hardwired into the industry, what you're hearing every time you walk into the dispensary, what you're reading on the packaging, what is on every blog post, what you like, every new person that's coming into it is being taught
Mm-hmm.
this number THC level is telling you how potent it is, which you just pointed out isn't necessarily accurate, and you're not necessarily getting the best high just because of a higher number. It's only one factor, and it's indica versus sativa, and you have these two buckets that it's either this or it's either that. And we all know in the industry, every grower you talk to knows that that is not accurate. It's not real. The indica sativa thing is like just a, I don't even understand. I should do a like deep dive into how this came about. I understand it's about like the morphology of the plant leaf, that you can identify it by the shape of the leaf. I don't even think that's necessarily
I
true
don't even think
anymore.
it's necessarily
Yeah,
true.
but I know that's how it started. And but why did it become associated with, one is going to get you relaxed and one is going to get you energized? Like, I have no idea, and that would be interesting to learn. But we all know it's not right. We all know you have to look at the terpenes. You all have to look at the different CBD and CBN and CBG and all the different things that go into it. um, Tells you like that's like everyone is going to have a different experience, and it has so many different factors, and yet we're just teaching everyone inside and outside the industry it's either indica or sativa. And 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 it's just like, I just am telling, every time I talk to a brand that's thinking about how to develop their brand, I'm saying you should lean into education, that it's totally untapped. The companies that invest in actually educating the industry and educating the consumer is going to have, a huge head start as we start to mature as an industry. And it's an investment that individual brands should be making, and the industry as a whole should be making. Um, and we're seeing, because we haven't done a good job of educating, what's happening now is like, oh, we have to outlaw this because it's bad. And they don't understand that there's so much nuance, and and the only way people are going to learn is if we, the industry, educate them about
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's part of the reason for this,
Yeah.
uh, is to just talk about what's going on in the industry. Um, for the people that I know that use, they tend to look up the specific strain and see what other users have experienced on it, and then what conditions they want to treat, instead of just saying, I just want to get stoned. Um, Everybody that I know that uses, they're looking for something specific. So I need to focus. What strains should I use? I have anxiety. What strains should I use? Or what terpenes, or what do other users say? And so that helps me look for the effect that I'm looking for, because I'm one of the ones that use it to treat very specific conditions. It completely threw a lifetime of deep depression into remission, so I'm huge about that. But I think most people today, they either believe the stoner stereotype, and I laugh. I'm like, nobody I know that uses um, falls into that, with very, very few exceptions, or almost the exception that proves the rule. I know a lot of professionals that use it, and they use it at the end of the day to relax, or they may even use it during the workday to focus. You're right. We need more education on this, because I know the different terpenes And there are other cannabinoids besides THC and CBD, and that's all anybody ever talks about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's tough because um, one, we're way behind on the research side because it's been illegal for
Thank goodness
decades.
for Israel doing the research on that.
Yeah. Um, and um, and it's tough. Like if you're an individual brand, it's like you're if you're trying to educate on this, it can feel like it's rowing upstream. And I know people are just like, there's no point in fighting it because the dispensaries want the highest THC level because the consumers want the highest THC level, and it's this kind of vicious circle that just keeps feeding itself. Um, and um, and like some brands are just gonna have to be brave and just be like, we're gonna like plant our flag on this, and we're gonna set ourselves apart because like we're gonna be like, hey, no, that's everything you know is wrong. Everything they're telling you is, you know, and I feel like that people will be attracted to that brand, right? When you're like, people like to know, like, oh, I'm getting something that no one else is getting because, I'm ahead of the game. People like to know, to feel that way. And so I just think that there's so much potential. But I think you might find this interesting. Um, I can think of at least five different companies. Some of them have been our clients. Some of them have reached out inquiring about hiring us and didn't. Maybe they hired someone else. Maybe they never hired anyone. But five startups that were all built around this idea of using data. Some are using AI to analyze all of the terpenes, all of the different, CBD, CBG, like all the different molecules, and like figuring out through a very analytical, data focused way how to improve the recommendation of different strains for different users and to give everyone a chance at personalization, uh, because it's never going to be one size fits all. This strain might work for some people to relax them, but it might make some other people paranoid, because it's interacting with our bodies in very complicated ways, and everyone is different. And so every strain will react differently for each person. And so you need to like if you can analyze the big picture and understand all of the different parameters and better like identify, oh, a person that fits this profile, other people that are similar have found this experience with these strains. And so it helps you, narrow down what probably works for you. Well, the kind of startup cost for this kind of company is huge. And so in every case, every one of these companies that I'm thinking of, they've all failed. Mostly before they've come to market. They couldn't even, get to, they couldn't even get the funding to launch. Uh, and we develop brands for some of these companies in anticipation of their launch that's going to be 3 months away, and then another 3 months away, and then it's like, oh, now we can't pay, and they just have all failed, because it's, you know it takes a huge amount of capital and information and data to like actually build out a system like this. So a lot of smart people are seeing the need for this and are trying to solve the problem, but there isn't the money, again, because the incentives in the marketplace are all out of whack. And so I have a feeling, and so some of these companies, in fact, in all these companies that I'm thinking of, none of them are selling their own cannabis. They're not producing it themselves. They're creating this kind of platform that it requires everyone to sign up for it. It requires the users to sign up for it. Requires the brands to sign up for, the cultivators to sign up for. So you can pull in all the data that you need to create like every. And so that's just a huge, not just the money, but like the getting the interest and the user base large enough that it can actually work. And then how do you turn that into a way to profit? Like, like like you're asking all these brands that are struggling to make money, like, hey, pay some of that hard-earned money that you're, whatever you have, to opt into this platform that we really don't have many users on. And so it's just like the business model is way out of whack. I have a feeling that it's going to be someone like a Leafly that already
Yeah,
has.
I was thinking about Leafly, where they kind of compile these reviews.
Yeah.
It's not scientific; it's anecdotal, but still, you can go on there and say, "Oh, 90% of the people on here said it was good for seizures,
Yeah. Yeah.
and 10% said that it was good for some other condition, and maybe 1% said that made them paranoid." Well, now I have some sort of information.
Yeah.
And I
And
can
that's
say, well,
like
I
the
don't have
starting
seizures.
point,
I
right?
don't need that particular
Yeah.
strain.
Yeah. And that's like the ground zero of what is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I expect, this is my, me trying to predict the future, but I expect something like a company like Curaleaf is going to buy a company like Leafly
Mm-hmm.
because they want to get access to all the data they have, and then build like, and they're building out their own data system. And that's how, like, it's a company that is going to be like, oh, we already have a huge market of users. We are producing, product. They're a huge. It's going to be a big MSO. It's going to be a Canadian company, right? That's already, um, and so they're gonna have the resources to put into it, and they're gonna be like, oh, they're gonna be like, oh, we want to be the Spotify of the cannabis industry, right? um, and and it's, who wants, all this information to be controlled by, $1 billion, company. But that's almost certainly where it's going to happen.
Well, it's because they have the resources to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just a huge challenge that's just come up this week is the stuff with the Farm Bill. Um, I'm curious to see if it sticks. And I kind of laugh because you mentioned red states, and they do tend to be a little bit more nosy.
Mm.
Um, but I also, I know of I know personally a lot of Republicans that disagree with the political class is doing. They want freedom. They want to be able to buy what they want so long as it's not harmful. They're more libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I try to steer clear of politics, but
Right.
I
I
think,
do too because people
yeah,
get mad and
yeah, but I think that is like, on the conservative side, that is like the internal battle that is going on between the libertarian wing and the
mhm.
wing of, we know better and we want to tell you what to do. Because yeah, the moral ground side.
Listening to some of these politicians
Yeah,
talk, I'm like, I have a cat that knows better
yeah,
than
yeah,
them.
that's
And on both sides of the aisle, I might add.
that's for sure. Yeah, but yeah, I like, you know, so last week I was in New York for the Business of Cannabis conference. I don't know if you know, like, it's just one of those events that is,
Mhm.
you know,
We talked about it. Yeah.
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 And so, yeah, it is. Yeah, I was there for that, and I was, I don't know if I want to say this. I was disappointed because New York is obviously newer to the industry than,
Hmm.
on the West Coast, Um, but it just, like, the conversations that were being had on these panels were, to my mind, so rudimentary and so, like, the same conversations we were having in 2018. And I'll give you one example that I'm sure is close to your heart, which is like, on one of the panels, they spent 15 minutes just kind of trying to guess when um, 1080E might get, repealed. And it's like the same exact conversation we were having in 2018 and 20, like, and like it wasn't like you go to one of these events, I think, for two reasons. One is networking, obviously. But when you're sitting in front of a panel and it's four people talking to a large room, there's no networking going on. So you're just, for that part, for that education piece, you want to have like concrete things that will help you
Uh-huh.
develop your business, grow your business, overcome obstacles to your business. And to just sit there and be like, I don't know. I don't know when 1080
That's not what people are paying for.
like no one
Oh, I
knows.
respect them saying that they don't know instead of just pulling talking points out of thin air.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
I mean, they no one was saying they
but
don't know. They should have.
if they
They were
didn't
just
know, then why bring up the subject?
I know. It's just like, but it was just such a like. I just feel like the industry needs to move forward, and that like the internal education as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
how to like it's a very 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 hard industry.
It is.
You deal with accounting, so you understand all of the expenses, and people that are getting into it don't understand like how challenging it is and how much more expensive it is and how those taxes when you can't take those deductions are going to really hurt you, and all those extra taxes at the state level, and sometimes at the local level, and all these obstacles that make it so much harder than running any business is hard, and running a cannabis business is much harder. And so like if you're doing an event like this, what are you like, how
What
are
are
you
you
helping?
bringing to the table?
Yeah. And just bringing in a bunch of like semi-famous people in the industry to like brag about their success isn't helping anyone.
Yeah, a lot of them are great people,
Themselves,
but
it's
that's not
those people.
helpful, and that's not what I would be paying to go do.
Yeah. So I felt bad for all these people that were there trying to learn, because I see it every day. These people are calling all the time, basically looking to us. How can you save us?
Hmm.
How can we get more customers? We were doing fine for the first year or two, but now our business is going down, and we don't know what to do to turn it around.
Right.
And most of the time, I'm thinking, well, we should have had this conversation before you launched, because you needed to invest in the things that were going to help you then. And now, when you don't have the money to invest and you're struggling, and you're kind of you didn't invest in your brand. You have a not great website. You have a generic brand that's got a cannabis leaf logo, just like every other one of your competitors, and your colors are green and black or green and gold. And like,
Like everybody else.
yeah, and I look at your packaging, and it's, not, it's like, oh, what you need is much better packaging, and it's going to cost you a few $1,000s that you don't have. And it's like, it's heartbreaking to see like all these people, these businesses failing, people that are really smart about growing the plant and have been doing it, for 10, 20, 30 years sometimes. uh,
Hmm.
but they don't have the skill set to run a legal business, especially a highly regulated one. um, and um,
Yeah, I always kind of refer them back to the E Myth by Michael Gerber. It's more about less regulated business, but it's applicable in that people will do things like they'll say, I'm a really good pie maker, or I'm a really good accountant, or I'm a really good marketer. I should go into business for myself. And they don't realize what goes into running a business. My one complaint, I guess, is that I just don't have enough hours in the day because I'm the owner, I'm the founder. I'm sitting here trying to train people and come up with programs and do things that I need to do as the owner as well as the accountant, and I can't do it in 8 hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really interesting conversation in New York with a fellow named Matt. I forget his last name. He is in the Michigan market,
Uh-huh.
and he is really smart about these things. And we kind of had a conversation that kind of coincide, that aligned with what I've been thinking for a while, which is um, if you're a plant touching business, if you're a producer or a retailer, um, then you have to look at what you're doing in one of two ways, ideally both. But if it's only one, then you have to go 100% into that one. And it's that either you are a commodity or you are a brand.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a commodity, then the most important thing to your success is how efficiently you can produce and sell your product. Whether you're a producer, a grower, or a retailer, um, or even a brand that's sourcing your weed from one place and then selling it through retail shops, wherever you are as a plant touching business, if you are like you're a commodity probably, because it's an agricultural product and people don't realize it, and they don't realize the difference between, oh, I have X number of plants in my basement, to now I have two racks in a office space somewhere, to now I want to grow at an industrial level. Like, the leap from one to two is big, and then the leap from two to three is exponentially bigger. And it's just like, if you're growing at industrial scale, it is completely different
Mm-hmm.
from you know from growing whatever number of plants in your basement
In
or
your
wherever
basement, yeah.
or in your backyard or wherever it is. And it's the same, and I think people understand this analogy because they're looking at it and trying to figure out how it works. But um, like, it's the difference between being Budweiser and being the microbrew in your local town. You know,
Right.
they're
Right.
completely
Although the local brew may be better,
yeah,
Budweiser is known.
right. And most of these cannabis companies are really competing as a commodity,
Hmm.
right? Because
All of them, I would say.
not they have not invested in their brand, right? Um, and so you all your focus has to be, how can I get my price point as low as possible, you know? And I feel so badly for most of these owners and growers, because their focus is like, "Oh, I want to grow the best weed possible." And it's admirable, and they're probably doing a really good job. But the market doesn't care, right?
Hmm.
Um, the market, um, the huge percentage of the market just cares about, you know, getting the cheapest weed possible with the highest THC level, which goes back to that education problem. Um, and so you have to realize that that's the truth of it, and how, and realize who you're competing against. Because when you're competing against these huge MSOs and these huge growers that are growing at scale, they have built-in advantages. And I've talked to business owners. I'll give you one example of a guy that I know here in Oregon, and he was not in the legacy market. He made his money as a import exporter, doing whatever, I don't know, but he made a lot of money. He's kind of nearing retirement age, and he just looked at this as an opportunity that he was excited about. And I think a lot of people know of people that are like wanting to dabble in the market and they have a lot of money to spend, but this is not what this guy's doing. He is like a pit bull when it comes to efficiency.
That's
And
awesome.
I would see him at lots of events, and he was always asking really detailed, tough questions of the people on the panel, like, just trying to zero in on any advantage he could have. And a typical conversation with him would be like this. I'd say, "Hey, how's it going?" He's like, "Oh, today was exciting. Today I noticed that on the floor my people were like the rack where we keep the bags of soil was here, and they have to like carry it over there to where they're putting it into the pots, or whatever. And I realized, oh, if I move that rack over here, every time they make that trip they're going to save 3 steps, and you calculate that over a day and over a year, and I've just saved this many."
Right.
and, and so that's what he's obsessed with, all these little details. And when I went to his grow, it was like walking into a spaceship. And when I go to grows, never fails. They're so proud. They're like, "Oh, we're the only ones that have this machine. We're the only ones that have this technique. We're the only," and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, I've seen this dozens, I've seen this so many times. Nothing like, you think that this is so special, but everyone is doing it." And I'm seeing all of it. Like, I'm not a grower. I don't, but I've been to enough that I can see that. I'm like, oh, like, oh, it's really important that we're clean. So they're like, "Oh, put on this jacket." And it's like, okay, but putting on a lab coat isn't protecting the seeds from, my shoes, or, and it's, but they're like, "Oh, we're so clean." And then you see that their dog is running in and out of the grow room.
Yeah.
Which, I love dogs, and so I don't mind. But like, they have no idea of what they're competing against,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't get into the industry to crunch numbers and worry about, how many footsteps it is. It's a lifestyle, and it's something that they're very passionate about, and it's about plant health, and it's about, like, it could be for any number of reasons, but it's not the same as, like, I want to run a successful, agricultural business at scale, right?
Yeah, those are entirely different
Yeah.
mindsets, and the lifestyle's fine.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, I would say that could be part of their education. Is there's different
Yeah.
lifestyles associated with it.
And
Um,
so that's what that guy Matt was saying. He's like, they need to realize, like, either they are a microbrew, they are a microgrow, they are a craft cannabis, and they need to really be craft and realize, oh, I might only have these 2 racks, but these 2 racks are going to be the highest quality, and I'm going to invest in having the best brand and the best brand experience. And you're going to see it in my packaging, you're going to see it in, our website, you're going to see it in our marketing, you're going to see it in every customer facing touch point. um, that, oh, this is a premium product that gives you a unique experience, and we're going to be able to charge a premium for it. And we only have we only have this many plants, and when they sell out, then you're just going to have to wait for the next, cycle.
mhm.
But we have a loyal following because we've invested in our branding and our customer interactions, and, creating this loyalty that, you know, the dispensaries are going to keep buying it because it keeps getting sold. Um, and realizing, like, oh, I've maximized this, kind of tier, and trying to translate that to a much larger tier at a larger scale. Now it's a completely different ballgame, right? If you're a local microbrewery with one restaurant in town, and then you want to have two, and then you want to have three, and then you want to like sell to others, and then it's like, oh, we're not in the same business anymore, right? And the only way they can continue down that path is to get bought out by the Anheuser Busches of the world. So yeah, you're either a commodity or you're a brand, and if you can be both, then great. But to be
Hmm.
both, you have to have a lot of capital to be able to, um, grow at scale and invest in my brand, to be one of these huge companies. And every state's only going to have a small number of success stories, and then when it goes national, it's going to consolidate so that it's only going to be a few. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, just lacking that awareness of you know you know what is the reality of this industry, and unfortunately too many people are waking up to that reality when it's too late. And and because the initial reality of that first year or two is like, oh, we're all making money. We were lucky enough to get one of those early licenses, and we got in as one of the first ones. And if you don't realize that that's only going to be for a year or two, and you're not prepared for dealing with the contraction that's going to happen, then you're going to be calling me 3 4 years in saying, oh, what can we do now to reverse it? And the truth is,
And usually by then it's too late, no
exactly.
matter what the business
Yeah.
is.
You needed to be investing in those things that would keep you sustainable as it contracts when you were doing well at the beginning. Instead of just like, oh, I'm doing well, I'm going to keep growing, I'm going to keep adding products, I'm going to keep adding, I'm going to add a new grow room, I'm going to like, and just thinking like I'm going to keep growing and it's going to keep making me the same amount of money or more.
Yeah, they're thinking like employees,
Yeah.
is what it is. They're thinking it's a steady paycheck. And once you go into business, that is not the case.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, they go into business, and what they really do is they buy themselves a job. And then if anything goes sideways or the market contracts in any way, they don't have the knowledge to deal with that. And they haven't put money aside for a rough time. Um,
Or they did, but then it's like, oh wait, it's way more and way worse than I realized, and the money I put away was not.
and it's always going to cost more than you think it would.
Yeah.
So if you think it's going to cost 50,000, maybe multiply that by 5 or 10,
Mm. Mhm.
because that's the fact is it's going to take longer and it's going to cost more than you expected. And until you have all of the data points you need to see what happened in the past that worked for you, you really are going to have to count on the market's going to contract. Your business is going to contract. Even if the market expands, your business is going to contract. It's going to ebb and flow. And it's important to be prepared for that. And most people aren't. I've had businesses go under because I kept telling them, put your sales tax money in a different account. It's not your money, it's the state's. And they didn't listen to me, and they would file their sales tax but not pay it. And I just was like, dude, I can't help you
Mhm. Yeah.
if you won't pay your bills.
Right. Yeah. Well, they can't pay their bills. That's the truth. Is that they're
Well,
unable.
this particular client
Yeah.
could have, but
Yeah.
they were busy spending their sales tax money at 7-Eleven,
Hmm.
buying snacks and drinks. The most expensive place to buy it, of course, you know. um, so yeah, that's an ongoing thing. So we were talking about education.
Hmm.
What topics would you want people to be aware of?
Yeah. Like, do you mean business owners or do you mean the consumer?
The consumer.
Yeah. Well, the consumer, um, like the things that we talked about. One thing that I've learned over the course of these years that have found the most interesting is, there was a science data company here in Oregon called Smart Cannabis that was running the Cultivation Classic,
Hmm.
which was one of the best events that I've seen. It was like a cannabis cup
Oh,
competition, um, but it was really focused on the science, and they had a very scientific way of doing the judging, where it wasn't just like, oh, we're gonna make sure the people that gave us the most money are the ones that are winning, or our buddies are winning. It was blind tests with many judges, and they were leveraging the data to help kind of build out their business model. One of the companies that I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, it was built around events and it was doing really well until COVID hit, and then kind of
oh, yeah.
went. So they had a COVID related, that's what brought them down. Because they were focused on the science of learning what the data was telling us about the effects of different people's experiences, um, which we talked about. But what the the scientist, her name is Dr. Adi Ray, one of the leading cannabis researchers, and what she said that they found was the number one correlating factor between um, whether you would have a positive experience with a strain, any particular strain, was if you liked the smell. So if you smell the flower and you're like, oh, I like that one, then you're going to have a more positive experience with that strain than ones that, I mean, and it makes perfect sense when you understand what terpenes are and the influence that terpenes have on the strains and the impact on your experience, that the smell would be the number. And so, all these other things like indica sativa, the strain name, all these other
None
things,
of that really matters.
definitely not as much as just like, do you like the smell? And
Hmm.
so from a consumer standpoint, that like there needs to be more nuance, that because we're talking about like, oh, is this going to give me a potent high? Is this going to help me relax? Is this going to help me focus? Like there's more nuance that just can't be encapsulated with the smell. Maybe if we were dogs and had more sense, we would be able to know the difference, but just like if you're a beginner and you don't know what you're doing, just to know like, hey, just smell the different strains, and the one that smells the best is the one that you're going to enjoy the most. And that's
I
huge.
actually went to a dispensary in Southern California that they had samples of all of their bud out so that it could be smelled. And I was telling them I'm trying to treat these conditions. And they said, well, here, let's start opening this up. And I said, I need something for pain. They said, well, what you want then is something that smells a little bit more diesely. But if you can't stand the smell, you won't use it. You know?
Right.
So I was kind of, they were like, if it's more flowery, then you get this effect. I don't remember all of them. I remember the diesely smell is more for pain. But they did say the same thing you did. If you like the smell, it's probably because it's something that your body needs.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And in some states you're not having the pharmacy style of just the open jar, and so you don't even have that opportunity. But you
I've been
can,
to a lot of states where you don't have that
right?
opportunity.
But even so, like with trial and error, you can take it home and you open it
Mhm.
up, and you're just going to be like, oh, this one smells good, or you're going to know the ones that you like, and so over time you can figure it out. But yeah, it's a really good starting point.
Yeah.
Um,
In fact, they told me there that sometimes there'll be something that smells really good that day, and a week later you might go, "Oh, I don't like this,"
yeah,
because you've solved what you're back into homeostasis and you've solved whatever imbalance that you
yeah.
may have had.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that hits upon what we talked about earlier, which is the THC numbers, and like if the consumers knew more about what goes into that number and
Hmm.
realizes that there is a perverse incentive for the testing companies to return the highest THC levels, because if you're not returning high THC levels, then they're going to go to, and some states hopefully don't have this flawed way of doing it, but many states do, where the producers get to shop around to the testing companies, these third party companies that are supposed to be agnostic, but if they're not giving you high THC level in your testing results, the growers are going to go to other testing companies that are. And so some of them are just, you know, outrageously just inflating the numbers. They aren't real at all. Some are, maybe like shading it in the direction because there's always going to be a range, and so they're going to default to the highest point. Um, and so and then there's some that are trying to be like, hey, we're doing this honestly and accurately because that's what we believe in, and um, and then they're going out of business because they can't compete, which is sad. But realizing, number one, that there is this perverse incentive. So if you're only looking at that number, you don't know that you're getting something that's accurate. And no, like what you said, like just because that number is high doesn't mean it's going to get you
Doesn't mean you're
higher.
going to get high.
Yeah.
You have to have the other cannabinoids.
And
It's
so
the entourage effect. It's important.
and
And
so make it like, if we can detrain the consumer from that number, so
yeah,
we can de-emphasize it, it will be better for everyone. It will be better for the consumer because we can get more accurate testing. We can get, we can get better weed that is focused on the right things instead of the wrong things. It's better for the growers. It's better for everyone. So
yeah. Yeah, I don't like the emphasis on any of the THC derivatives
yeah.
because my own experience has been if it's 50-50 with CBD, then it's a better experience.
Hmm.
Um, and I am aware of other cannabinoids that I'm interested in. CBN helps you sleep. CBG helps with social. I have a packet of edibles that I took for my mother's funeral, and that was a few months ago. They're still here. But they were high in CBG, and I didn't realize that acts as, I don't want to say a social lubricant, but it helped me deal with my mother's death in a way that I could manage it. It was an overwhelming event. I'm still affected by it. It was in July. I'm still deeply affected by it, probably will be for the rest of my life. But it got me through that day without breaking down. I'm not a big crier, but I was close to my mom. So that was, and I had to be there for my siblings and for her friends and for family friends of years, decades. Um, CBG helped with that. And I was specifically asking the dispensary, the bud tenders, what do you have that's going to help me get through this day?
Yeah. Um, um, I think,
And most
like,
people don't know about any
yeah,
cannabinoids besides THC and CBD.
yeah. I think like I mean, your experience is like, it's the experience. Like everyone has to go on their own journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone has to, and part of that's because it's a very complicated, complex plant that has, a very diverse history of, botany that goes into all these different strains. And so there's such diversity that, obviously there's going to be so many different experiences with different versions of it. But also because the industry is so new and we don't know so much still, and we're just scratching the surface, that in, some ways you're on your own, right? And that story you told about the bud tender in California talking about like the diesely smell,
Mm-hmm.
like, is that true? I don't know. Like,
It gave me something to kind of go off of
yeah,
instead of
exactly.
going, oh, well, I don't know.
Yeah. And like, like that's kind of where we are. And it's important to realize that's where we are. It's like that bud tender, is telling you what they've heard. And did they hear it from is it their experience?
Where did they hear it from? Is it reputable?
You don't
Was it
like,
West Coast?
yeah, yeah.
I love the West Coast.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like, there's, you know, there's things that we learn from group experience, and we go, like, we've collectively hopefully taken us in a better direction, but also we get stuck in the wrong thinking sometimes, and indica
Yeah.
sativa is the perfect example of that, where we get taught it and then we teach other people, and we confirmation bias means that we start to make it, like, oh, we're seeing that, oh, this is true, and so we can also go the wrong path as a collective. And so I think for anyone that is canna curious or canna experienced, just like looking at it as like, oh, this is a journey that I'm going on, just like your health journey. Everyone has their
Mhm.
own journey, and just like,
Yeah,
your
what works for
body.
me doesn't work for my husband.
Yeah,
What works for me doesn't work for my best friend,
yeah,
or my kids even. It's just that's mine. That's my journey, and that's kind of why I'm frustrated with the government. Is
yeah,
they don't understand that it's very individual. Some people are involved in the. I think you are involved in the industry, but don't use. It's. I just did a presentation for my networking group, and I talked about working with cannabis clients. And one gentleman he's an older man, and he was just at the end of my presentation, he was like, "Oh yeah, you're just wanting to get stoned." I was like, "When did I say I use it?" I said I work with clients. I also work with distilleries. I also work with breweries, and I don't consume those either. You know, I don't drink. So, well, I take that back very occasionally, but drinking is not a big part of my life.
right.
It never has been. I can work with coffee companies, but that doesn't mean I drink coffee. It just means that I'm available to work with those industries. And so I was really kind of taken aback that his immediate thing was, well, you just want to work with these companies because you want to get high. And I was like, I'm pretty open about using, but it is for conditions. It is for, I'm looking for a relief that the pharmaceutical industry just doesn't give me. I am one of those people. I've been on Prozac and Paxil and Vyvanse and Adderall, and I've just found that cannabis works better. I was really kind of insulted,
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
honest.
You should. Yeah, I
He's
think
just a very straight arrow kind of a guy.
he was he was being
Very
insulting.
older
Yeah,
Utah.
yeah. Well, it's part of the stigma that we're dealing
It
with.
is, and I'm trying really hard to help overcome that. And a lot of it is I talked about. I've had drinks actually sent to me. They're still there, unopened. Um, I've got clients that want to do textiles. I've got clients that do skincare, all with cannabis. I was like, you guys have no idea what this plant can do or could do if we could actually do the research on it.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What do you have any other questions? We've covered a lot.
We've covered a lot. How can people reach you?
Well,
And
yeah.
are you are open for clients that are not in the cannabis industry?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. Um, yeah. The Hood Collective is our website. It's hoodcollective.com.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you can reach us if you're interested in cannabis marketing. But we have recently, the last few months, started a non-cannabis marketing agency as well, called Klur, Kleur. So our website is kleurstudio.com.
Okay,
So if you're not a cannabis or CBD business, we can still help you with your marketing. And
awesome.
I will say this, because we have cut our teeth for almost a decade in the cannabis space, we are so much better at what we do. The restrictions and the obstacles
Huh?
and the hurdles are so tough that we're like, it's so much easier outside the cannabis space. And so, like, we like, our pricing is going to be better, that like we're dealing with a really difficult industry, and so we're able to apply a lot of knowledge that was earned, you know, in the hardest way possible to, some of these, I'm sure, if you're have a business that is not cannabis, you're like, this is also not easy, but you will appreciate our prices because
Hmm.
we've had to to keep our margins as low as possible because it's the only way people in the cannabis industry can afford us.
Awesome. And
Yeah,
I love that you kind of cut your teeth on one of the hardest industries in the States.
that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on. I will put your contact information in the show notes
Thanks. Yeah.
and make sure that people can reach you.
Mhm.
And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. Good luck with the podcast. And yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for bringing attention to this.
Of course.
Yeah.